Nuottaa saadaan kalaa. Australia. Vetä nuottaa saadaan kalaa. Tasmania. Vetä nuottaa saadaan kalaa. Hobart. Thank you. So that's a very old song, and that's a song that we sometimes still sing when we do the seining, which is the traditional livelihood and way of life and subsistence harvest in my village. So thank you very much for all coming tonight. I have 8 minutes, of which 7.5 is remaining. So I'll try to be very quick. I just want to say at the very beginning that I want to acknowledge the past and present traditional owners of this place and the indigenous peoples that have had severe history here but are still surviving in Tasmania, and it's a very great honor to be on your lands today. So when I left home, it was only minus 37, and today it's plus 25. So I think that constitutes climate change on a global scale. And I started my travels from the upper part of the planet and then went down to the bottom. So it's really something to travel all this way. And I'm really thankful to all the sponsors and the conference for inviting Snowchange and us from the north to speak here. So I work for Snowchange, which is a non-profit organization based in Finland, but with over 2,000 indigenous and local village people, reindeer herders, hunters, fishermen, and other community people across all of the Arctic and the north, from boreal to the tundra, including Siberia. And what I'll try to tell you today is not a weather report of how many degrees the Arctic is changing. Rather, I'll bring you the messages from our network of Inuit people, Siberian Chukchi, Evenk, the Finnish, the Sami, and many other local communities in the Arctic and in the north who are facing a lot of these changes. So that's the mandate that Snowchange has. We try to work directly with the communities on the ground to find solutions to the most crucial event of our lifetime, which is the climate change impacts. When I think of my own fishery, I lead a small fishing unit of commercial fishing. It's really the lake ice that's beginning to change. There's no ice. 1/3 of the season has been lost. Usually the safe ice on the lakes comes roughly at the end of November. This year it came middle of January. It usually leaves us early May. Nowadays you can lose the ice at the end of March. So we are talking about losses of 1/3 to 1/2 of the way the ice cover appears on the lakes. The Sami reindeer herders who work with us on a number of communities report ice rain that falls in the middle of the winter and freezes the pastures of lichen that are the natural foods especially in the early parts of the winter, in autumn, which are the natural foods for the reindeer that we enjoy eating. So if you are thinking about Rudolph the red-nosed reindeer, don't listen to what I just said. We actually do eat them. So these are some of the kind of changes that are really going on right now. Many of the old people say 1986 was the last proper winter we used to have. So it's been 30 years of constant change. But it's not only seasons that are shifting. You can have, in a space of 24 hours, temperature change from minus 32 to plus 5. So these are the kind of conditions which are now here. They constitute our reality. they are here every month, every day, every season, every year. They are the source of a great stress to the people who are out in the land, on the lakes, in the bush, and trying to cope with these things. One of the most urgent issues that I want to tell you, all of you, is that in our member communities in Siberia, a very ancient way of life is preserved. This is the indigenous nomadic reindeer herding, unbroken for centuries, perhaps thousands of years. The Chukchi reindeer herders at the northeastern corner of Siberia live in the most coldest spot on the northern hemisphere. In their home, the temperatures can go down to minus 60 or minus 70 on a usual winter. In the summer, they are also operating on a very cold land, with the average temperature on a summer day minus 2 to plus 5 in August. The Chukchi lands are, or the land that they are calling home, is permanently frozen. It's so-called permafrost land. The Siberian permafrost is starting to melt. It's melting now, and it's having tremendous impacts to the global climate change. Because as the permafrost melts, trapped in that permafrost are millions of tons of new greenhouse gases, such as methane, which are currently being released. And through the work we are doing with natural scientists like Jacques Tova and others, we have discovered that the ocean is also releasing the methane in northeastern Siberia. This is a feedback loop that can't be stopped, and it's now going on. And this is the most urgent message that I want to tell you. If nothing else, please remember this from the presentation. The permafrost is really melting, and we are moving into a future that has no parallel in history, whether it's oral history, traditions, or science. A lot of these changes are facilitating also interests. The old boys are back. For example, in my village, we have constant interest from the mining companies as many of these remote and previously inaccessible areas become available. We have fought and won over 3 mining companies in the past 5 years that want to come and harvest, for example, the richest uranium in Europe that's on our soils. Further up in the Arctic, the infrastructure, oil and gas, and the mining activities constitute a severe threat to the existence of these indigenous and local communities as these areas become more accessible. If we are then thinking about the actual species and the animals, how do we constitute internally about these changes? I'll give you just very quickly 3 examples. 1, in Siberia, there's a species of fur animal called the sable. It's expanding its range to the tundra because even though it's a taiga or a forest animal in the past. Many of the traditional societies and people in Siberia say there are no songs about the sable. There are no old stories about the sable. Sable is a good case where new animals are entering our realities, and the tradition no longer can guide us how to deal with them, how to form appropriate relations, and how to be with these arriving species. In my own village, we have new winds from the southwest that come in the middle of the winter, bringing really warm air, melting the snow and ice. The 2 old people that raised me up in the culture are trying to speak to these winds and ask, who are you? How should we be with you? What is your being? And try to create these new winds to find out how to live in this new reality. And again, in Siberia, which constitutes the most traditional societies in the Arctic, many of the indigenous elders have said a very profound statement over and over again. Nature doesn't trust us anymore. So these are very profound messages, no matter how you take them. These have inherent value for science if you have rooted indigenous and local societies harvesting on the land and making these observations, just like we saw with the previous speakers. But internally, for these cultures, societies, and ways of life, these constitute massive revolutions every day. Especially the last sentence said by many Siberian elders, nature doesn't trust humans anymore. If we take that as a starting point for answers with which I will end my presentation, we come to a realization that climate change and the things that are now underway is not a scientific question. It's not an economic question. It's not even a political question. First and foremost, it's a spiritual question. Many of the world's spiritual leaders, such as the Pope, Dalai Lama, and many others, are joining hands across religions, even today or in a few days in Cuba, across Christianity, to come to this same realization. Our relationship with nature has been wrecked. And in order to survive in this new reality that has no parallels, we need to rebuild that relationship urgently in all of our societies, no matter who we are. What are the kind of forms that it takes in practice through the work of Snowchange? I'll give you very quickly 3 examples. 1. In Siberia, we are financing solar panels to the nomadic schools on tundra so that the reindeer herders can stay on the land as she changes, because they feel that is the best option for food security, survival, and a guide in a world that nobody knows about and is in chaos. So maintaining traditions, viewpoints, and a consistent message and direction building on that core of a tradition guides us in the work we do. In my own village, we understand that we need to undo the damages of the past. So we are relying on traditional knowledge and the latest science to conduct ecological restoration of 2.7 million euro watershed restoration, but also installing the very first co-management regimes, so that we try to make sure that the damages that once wrecked that watershed will never happen again. The Sami people up in the Finnish Arctic are trying to live together with the Atlantic salmon by increasing the spawning sites of Atlantic salmon rivers so that the salmon will have more space, more diversity, and more chances to cope as the Arctic warms. In fact, many of the people say in the Arctic that the climate change of today is a result of, or it began already a century ago when the first oil and gas mining and other abuses began. So we are just witnessing a legacy of the colonial past. What can we say in this moment in time? It's a very precious moment in time, and all of you came tonight to listen to all of these presentations. It's a moment we need to seize in an never before seen humility to grab this chance across science, across languages, cultures, human societies, animal societies, to come together. There's no other chance. All of us are living in boxes of fear, of convenience, the truth that we want to hear, the iPhone that we want to look at, the iPads. Instead, what we need to do today, right now and today, is to imagine the beautiful future that we want to have instead of these PowerPoints, charts, and the doom and gloom. It begins here and it begins tonight, and I'm very proud and happy to be here and it will be a beautiful future if we have the spirit and the strength to do the work we need to do. Thank you very much.